Hey, what's up guys? Sir Emanon here, and today I'm going to be bringing to you guys a brand new deck profile for the June 2020 format, which is going to be Altergeists. So with the newest ban list, of course, we got 3 Multifaker back, and if you guys didn't know, Altergeist was one of the original decks that I played right when I started becoming more competitive, which was around the time that it came out. I got competitive a couple months before, like in that same season, but yeah, this is like one of the initial decks that I really started to like learn the control elements of the game with. So I definitely have a soft spot for this deck, and I really missed playing it, and I kind of want to just return to it and see exactly what changed with it. So because of that, I actually participated in today's Pro Play Games event, and I know because they're using a custom ban list that has kind of sparked some divisive controversy. So I understand both sides of it. Like I understand why some people were in favor of it and some were staunchly against it. But I'd actually like to know your guys' thoughts if you have problems with me featuring content with that specific format in mind, because this deck was definitely built, with the absence of Halka-Fibrax and Block Dragon and all that stuff. So I can definitely, again, see why players would either be for or against such a ban list. So I'm going to leave a poll in the community tab, which you guys can check out. I'll leave a link in the pinned comments for you guys to just, tell me what you guys think in terms of what kind of content you consider competitive enough, or like if you don't really care, or if you deem things, certain things more competitive than others, etc., etc. So I figured that just for this showcase, I don't think that this list would change extremely drastically with, keeping in mind Adamancipator and Eldritch's dominance. But that being said, there would certainly be changes that would make with that in mind. But I'm just gonna go ahead and run through the list and talk about some of the the theory that I had, because I actually spent a fair amount of time coming up with how exactly I wanted to approach the deck. And so you guys know how much I enjoy talking about theory, so that is what we are going to be doing. So the monster lineup is, of course, pretty standard. It's 3 Marionetter, 3 Meliseek, 3 Multifaker, a Konkiri, and 2 Silk. Literally the OG, I guess. Standard 12 Altergeist ratio. Nothing really too much to explain here. These are the cards that make you win. So the theory really comes with the non-engine cards, as well as the extra deck, actually, which I spent quite a while thinking about. But as far as the monsters themselves, there's not a whole lot to say. The hand traps, I ran 3 Ash and 2 Veiler for the monster hand traps. I was playing 3 Veiler for a while in testing, but I actually cut the 3rd Veiler to fit in a 3rd Call by the Grave, which I'll talk about actually in a bit, because a lot of people don't really run this card. But yeah, I think that even though there's not as many like Wombo Combo Needle Fiber decks, well, obviously there's not going to be any in a format where it's banned, right? But even though there weren't going to be those combos, I still felt that Veiler was just the widest coverage hand trap. And also you'll notice I'm playing Selene in the extra deck, so this is like, I guess, an additional spellcaster to be able to normal summon in a pinch. Doesn't really come up often, but I can. But yeah, I figured that, like it was between maining Veiler or maining Crow, and I just felt that like Veiler would be, again, like more all-purpose, especially like in mirror match, which I expected, but I ended up playing 0. So yeah, that ended up not being a thing, but Veiler still came in pretty handy, and I was happy to have it. I still wanted some hand traps to respect potential combo decks that might have popped up, like Dragon Link was being talked about quite a lot, so I wanted to respect it. But yeah, I just felt that like having monster hand traps is also really nice, because it just allows you to not have to like play into Evenly, or play into Lightning Storm. You can just have more of your defense kind of in other means that don't lose quite as hard, especially post side. But yeah, I felt that like these were like pretty safe to main. I thought about Nibiru, but like I definitely didn't want to main it in a format where like Needle Fiber was banned. I just feel like it would have been largely useless, and I actually cut it entirely. I had it in the side for a while too, but I ended up cutting it completely, not only because it conflicted with Faker, but I just felt like it wasn't necessary with the way that the deck ran, and just the way that the format was like developing. But yeah, that's one of the changes I was talking about, where obviously in a format with Needle Fiber still running rampant, I would certainly still opt to play Nibiru somewhere. It's just that a lot of the time I felt Nibiru wasn't really impacting the game states that I imagined it would. So yeah, overall, I just decided that like single interruption hand traps and disruption pieces is where this deck is really really good at, because trading one for your opponent is always good in a deck where you have Marionetta, which is a +1, Faker, which is a +1, Melisseek, which can be linked away to become a +1. Everything is a +1 essentially. So like as long as you make one-for-one trades, you are essentially going to profit in a lot of those instances. So like you don't necessarily need the big blowout cards unless if you're in a really bad matchup, i.e. some big combo deck like Adamantipator, which wasn't present. So I felt like, again, it just wasn't needed, so I decided not to bother with it. So the spells are the 3 Extravagance, obviously, and 3 Call by the Grave. So you'll notice a very curious card that I'll get to later in here. But yeah, because of how much emphasis I actually placed on it, that being this gem right here, I decided that like this was gonna be treated more of like, I'm not gonna say a combo deck per se, but I really treated the deck very, very aggressively. I want to end the game as quickly as possible, because it's true that the deck is good at grinding, but like if you give your opponent more opportunities to play, then like there's no point when you can just close out the game as fast as possible. And I just felt like a lot of the time you end up just losing games that you shouldn't, because like your only play is Melisseek into Linkuriboh and you get ashed and you just can't recur your engine. Not to say that there's like no ways around it. Like you can definitely play around like Ash, for example, if it open strike, like you don't have to link right away, especially if you open something like Protocol. Like that's just kind of like some of the basic theory. But yeah, like in certain cases where like linking away Melisseek is your only option and you get like hand trapped and you just lose, like that's like the biggest thing. And I also felt that like with the quote unquote combos that you can do, like later or like first turn with Marionetta setting the Haunted Rock, I just felt that like I wanted to ensure that that would always resolve. And I also felt that Call by the Grave just had good enough utility in that like because it wasn't maining DD Crow, like this could kind of be that replacement in a sense. Obviously not like entirely impactful going second, but it still gets the job done in a lot of cases where like not many of these decks are locking you out of the game, like just by the turn 1 setups. Like you're not really getting choked out in a lot of cases. And actually, a lot of the opponents that I played against who won the die roll against me actually made me go first. So that was pretty indicative of how the format kind of was, at least from my experience. But yeah, Call by the Grave, pretty good in terms of just offering protection against like the aggressive plays that I like to employ. And you might be thinking in that regard, like why not play 1-for-1? You know, you're playing like more than just Ash or hand traps, and like 1-for-1 would be really good with Call by the Grave. I just really couldn't figure out like a good card to cut. Like maybe I could have cut like Call by the Grave to 2. Like I had it at 2 for a while with like 3 Valor, and then like I mentioned before, I swapped out the 3rd Valor for the Call by the Grave. And it's possible maybe I could have played a 1-for-1 as well, but like I don't know. 1-for-1 is just super risky when you don't specifically have like insurance. It's true that like its win percentage is really high, but I felt that like actually a lot of the time the Haunted Rock play would actually fulfill pretty similar roles in a lot of cases. Just like in different scenarios, right? Because like obviously 1-for-1 helps fix the hands where you're like missing pieces entirely, but like it's also a really really solid card for just accelerating your tempo when either you are ahead or behind, whereas like the Haunted Rock play is only really good when you obviously open the pieces to play with to begin with. But that being said, I feel like both fulfill a similar niche in terms of just getting your engine online ASAP. And like even though like 1-for-1 fixes one of the deck's problems, which is not opening any Geist monsters, I feel like the Haunted Rock play fixes the other problem of the deck, which is opening too many monsters. So I'll talk about that in just a bit. Well, I guess I can talk about it right now. So the traps, the Geist traps are 3 spoofing, 2 protocol, 1 manifestation, and the Haunted Rock. So because of the existence of Link Cross, this becomes a lot better. I used to really, really be against this card. I really thought that it was just either a win more or a kind of do nothing card. Obviously, is it a brick when you draw it? Absolutely, it does nothing. And I did draw it a couple of times. That being said, though, I really do feel that because of the fact that you can open Marionetta and literally any Altergeist monster and have it turn into an instant multi-faker by going into Hexia and then going into Link Cross, I just thought that the value was too much to pass up on. Because like you can open like even double Marionetta, or you can go like Marionetta Silk or Marionetta Conquery, and that's totally fine. Like before the combos, quote unquote combos with Haunted Rock, like had to specifically be Marionette plus Melisake or Marionette plus Multifaker. But yeah, I just felt like because now it's so much more flexible, like you can really do a lot of cool things. Like for example, if you have Marionette plus like one of the quote unquote bad like geists to combo with it, you still get a guaranteed faker search, provided they're not playing like anything weird. Actually, it's pretty much guaranteed because you chain block. I was thinking Skullmeister, but you can chain block Skullmeister too. But you can chain block from Ash if you link cross for the tokens as chain link 2 after you link away the Hextia. So that's really good. If you open the Marionette plus Melisake before, if you got ashed on the Melisake, then like it didn't really get you anywhere with the Haunted Rock play. But now, like if you get ashed on Melisake, you can just go Hextia and like it's the same thing, and then they're just down in Ash. Like it would be the same thing as if you had like Marionette plus any other Geist, right? So yeah, like that's really good. And actually, a lot of the time, like if I open Marionette and Faker, I don't tend to go for Haunted Rock a lot of the time because that play actually does end up losing to Ash, much harder in a lot of cases. Where like you might as well have just set Protocol, and that would be the same thing there if you already have Faker access. But in the cases where you don't open Faker, which is a fair amount of the time, but you do open Marionette, which is also a fair amount of the time, you can really get a lot of mileage out of it. So I do think it's something that's worth trying. I'm not 100% sold on it, like if it's the best choice to run, but like I was really satisfied with it. Like it came up a lot during the event, and it came up an absurd amount during testing. So I really enjoyed having it just as an option. Because like if you open a Marionette plus Silk, like before again you wouldn't really go for the Haunted Rock play, but like now that you can like Silk add back the Haunted Rock and then like spoof it away for something else. So like you can get like Concrete access. So you just keep snowballing, and it just helps you in those cases where like you want to again really accelerate the pace of the game, in my opinion, where like you can just win as quickly as possible. And I figured that like this is the best sort of catalyst for that. The other thing to mention is the ratio of manifestation. So people are always back and forth on 1 and 2 of this. So I feel that there is a case to be made for 2, not even just because Faker used to be at 1, but like there's a combo you can do where if you end phase like say flip Protocol and then Faker for Melisake on your opponent's turn, and then your turn comes around, you have a play where you can go for any link 4 in the game and have double manifestation Protocol set, and have Faker set up. So like that's really nice because it allows you to like use both manifestations, like one of them on Hexia, the other one on Prime Banshee, and then you can trigger Faker. So like you have Hexia pointing to Prime Banshee, so you can like recur like whatever resource, and you also have Silk, and you have like whatever link 4 you want to go for, whether it's like Bomber Dragon or Appaloosa or whatever. I actually really like a lot of the extra deck plays, but I just felt like overall it didn't come up too frequently for it to matter a whole lot. Granted, there were definitely cases where like I just wanted more recursion, because again manifestation is an offensive card that lets you push, but it's not a starter, so that's why it is fine to play at 1, I feel. But yeah, like there's definitely a case to be made. I was testing around with 2 before the event as well, because again I just really like aggressive pushes, and I feel that that is what the deck really needs to thrive. Like people, I feel like you can't sit behind like a Silk loop and like just a Silk loop for the entire game, because eventually your opponent will be able to mount resources, right? So like ways to actually close the game is really important in my mind. So that being said, I feel like Haunted Rock is kind of like, in other ways it's similar to manifestation in that it facilitates offensive combos. All right, so enough about that. Next up, we got 3 impermanents as the other hand trap, Imperm Faker, XD meme. But yeah, it doesn't happen like very often, to be honest. I can't remember I don't even think it happened at all during the tournament, but I mean, it's just a good hand trap to play. 3 compulsory, this is like an iffy one. I've seen players play like Crackdown, Lost Wind, even Torrential Tribute, and like these are all like fine choices in my opinion, but I think that compulsory is still just overall really good. Really good going both first and going second. It helps to break boards. It helps to just make offensive plays. It's a good manual trigger for Faker too, because I feel like a lot of the times, like if you have certain traps that you can't really activate, for example, like Strike, that you just can't freely flip up, it doesn't like do you a lot of good. But you can like compulse a random monster, sometimes even your own monster, like Faker notwithstanding, like you can even bounce like other stuff, but just any way to trigger Faker, like at your own leisure instead of relying on your opponent to take action, I feel is a valuable resource. So with that, we also play 3 strike. This is also a good card going first and going second. Like I feel like the synergy going second to break boards with like torrential strike or something like rivalry strike back in the day is pretty good. Like if you remember against Goki, what this deck would do is like it would main 3 rivalry, and like with strike or protocol, you can like flip up rivalry against the U-Link. They would Tri-Gate negate it, and then you would strike the Tri-Gate. Like that's how that used to be. So like applying similar logic in terms of like breaking boards or like forcing whatever negates, and then just punishing. Like you could do like similar, but I guess more minor things with Compulse, with strike. But yeah, it's still really good at breaking boards, especially if your opponent commits into like higher link monsters like Access Code or things of that nature. It's still really good. And notably, you'll see that I actually cited Solemn Judgment and I didn't main deck it. I just felt like Judgment was too weak going second in a lot of cases. Like if you're staring down an established board and like Judgment is what you have instead of something like a Compulse, then I don't know. I just feel like I would never really want to be in that position, because I wouldn't anticipate people in most cases main decking like the big blowout cards like Evenly Matched or Lightning Storm. So I don't feel like it's necessary to main deck this card. I feel like it's reserved for the side deck when you're anticipating those cards. There is a case to be made where like this is better than Call by the Grave against those cards. It's like, what do you fear more? But I do feel like Call by the Grave still has utility going second, because like just because you're going second like blind in a situation going in game 1 doesn't mean that like your opponent's not going to hand trap you, right? Or it doesn't mean that like if you choose to go second, or not, sorry, if your opponent makes you go second, doesn't mean that like they side out their hand traps necessarily. So like I feel like this is still like a good catch-all card, based on like a variety of matchups, as well as just like the insurance against like specific hate cards that would deter you in some ways as much as like an Evenly and a Lightning Storm. Because you have to keep in mind, like the way that you lose with this deck a lot of the time is just by not being able to play with your engine. Because like if you have your engine access, you're gonna be able to win a majority of those games. But if like you get ashed on Melistic, I know I keep harping around this example, but like if you get ashed on Melistic and that is literally your only play, it is effectively the same thing as getting like Lightning Storm to Evenly Matched. It's just that like in those cases, yeah, you'll have like generally for the defensive cards that like you can use to slow down your opponent, so you can like maybe hope to top deck something. But like hoping to top deck when you have like very low resources is never a good thing in this deck. So like I kind of like correlate these two cards similarly in terms of their overall functionality, but I don't think that Judgment is nearly as good going second. So that's Imperial Order is the last card. I don't think that really needs explaining. Just really good main deck Floodgate. Manual trigger for Faker, really good. So that is it for the 40 card main deck. I really try to keep it to 40 because again, like the worst hands of this deck are when you brick on like all your non-engine cards. So I really like, as much as I want to like max out on Valor, I don't like playing the two ofs, but it is what it is. I'll take the sacrifice of like having it look a little funny to opening too many non-engine cards when really you can't play more engine cards than you already are, unless if you're debating like duality or 1-for-1. But I guess maybe I could talk a little bit about duality. I just again feel like because of how aggressively I like to play the deck, and because especially you can go Haunted Rock turn or plays turn 1, like the argument is often that like duality is good going first on your first turn, so because like you don't special summon that turn, but like with Marionetter that kind of gets thrown out the window. And I feel like duality and 1-for-1 together doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because like in the it's low percentage depending on the ratio of duality you decide to run, but like I don't know, in the cases where you have like a special summon heavy hand or a duality or like a 1-for-1 duality, like it becomes really, really awkward to kind of make use of those hands. Like I kind of wanted to minimize conflict given the fact that I'm already running like a brick in the terms of the Haunted Rock, because like in exchange for that, the payoff is just really, really big. But I don't want to run more cards that can potentially be dead, right? So like I want this to be like pretty much the only hard garnet of the entire deck, like both in isolation and in tandem with other cards, I should say, because like there's no cards in this deck that conflict with one another really, because like there's no Nibiru, there's no Phantasme, there's no like duality with special summon heavy hands. Like everything works together when you draw like you can isolate most 2 card combinations and like they'll work well together, unless if like the combination is, I don't know, like Silk Ash or like you know things like that. But I digress. You get the point of what I'm saying. All right, so all right, moving on now finally to the extra deck. I'll do extra deck first. So it's 3 Hextia, 1 Prime Banshee. I was playing 2 for a while, but then I realized that like because we have 3 Faker back again, it's not really needed to go into the Prime Banshee plays, because like a lot of the time you're using Prime Banshee to loop Faker back to your hand. Like the play I was mentioning earlier with like the end phase protocol involves Banshee adding back Faker. So yeah, like you don't really need it as much, but I still think it's really nice to be able to link climb, and it's overall pretty good, just because like there's certain plays like if you wanted to go Marionette plus Faker with the Haunted Rock combo, like you could go for a Prime Banshee setup, which isn't too bad. Another thing like is if you open like way too many monsters, something like Marionette plus Silk plus Faker. Like you can like pitch the Silk off of the Haunted Rock and then trigger Faker because you activated a trap, and then so you get like a Melistic off the Faker, and then you get Silk back off the Marionette by swapping out the Haunted Rock. Silk adds back the Rock, so you just have like a free card, and then you have 4 monsters, so like you are able to pretty much go the full Prime Banshee route where you go like Hexia, Banshee, Hexia, and then like that gets you a search, an add back, a search off the Melistic, and then add back off the Silk. So like you get like 4 cards added back from that initial investment, which is really really good. Ends up being a pretty good play. I think that's like a +2, I believe. Yeah, because you have the Hexia in the field. So yeah, I still think the Banshee is still worth playing. I don't think it's as integral anymore, just from testing and from playing in the event. I definitely didn't miss the second one, and even when it gets banished, like it's generally fine. And then we have 3 Link Cross. So this is a card that I definitely undervalued in this deck, because I was like, okay, that's cool. Like you can turn Hexia into a Link Cross, but like how often does that come up? It turns out it comes up a lot, and it came up so often where like I would banish the 2 Link Crosses that I was playing, and I'm like, wow, like this actually hurts like my ability to accelerate the pace of the game, which again is like the name of the game. Because like keeping in mind, a lot of the times like if you have Hexia, like sorry, if like you're linking away the Hexia for Link Cross, like it often doesn't matter, because like either you're getting like a protocol search or a manifestation search, like if you already had access to Melistic, or in the cases where like you open say like a Marionette plus whatever Geist to go for the Haunted Rock play, then you are like just trying to achieve a game state where like you can out resource your opponent and just keep snowballing with multi-faker, right? So I just feel like Link Cross is too important, because like in the times where you do need it, like it really really is not only like helpful, it's not just a luxury, sometimes it's a necessity, which I feel like again, in a world where this card isn't ever printed, like you don't really miss it, but now that we have it and now that I've played with it, like it's really really insane. And even though Pukeri is not out yet, or Pukeri, or the level 1 guy who allows you to make Hexia, basically kind of similar to what Haunted Rock does, but just probably better, but it's like a similar concept, right? So I think that Link Cross is really 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 integral, and you'll notice that I'm not playing Relinquished Anima. Anima just never came up. There was never a point where I wanted it. There was never a point that I needed it. There was never a point that I summoned it when I had it in my extra deck. Like it relies on like your opponent playing poorly, which I think is never really a good thing. And it also just relies on you, like it doesn't do a whole lot that like Link Remo, Almirage don't already do. Like I would sooner play a 3rd Link Remo than I would a Relinquished Anima personally. Also, just because of how high of an emphasis I have on Link Cross, just having Link Rebo in the game is like really really important, because it allows you to just climb into stuff later on. Like if the tokens manage to survive, like you can go like have a Link Rebo and then like go into a Phoenix or a Security Dragon to clear away space, and then like you can climb into like Ningirsu or Celine. So that's kind of like explaining the whole concept of my extra deck, right? So it's like Link Rebo and Almirage. Yes, they're Link ones to turn Melistic. Oh, whoops! I timed out. Hold on, be right back. All right, I'm actually just not gonna edit that. You're just gonna see that whole thing. Anyways, what was I saying? So yeah, in the cases where you have to use link Rebo, uh, to link away like for Melisik, like that's fine and stuff. But again, it like facilitates just ways that you can use the link cross tokens for your advantage. And Almirage comes up with like it came up more when I was running two manifestation, obviously, but like when you open Silk Manifest, it guarantees a continual disruption loop where like you just bounce manifest and then like put Silk back in grave, just keep bouncing cards. But yeah, I feel like these just offer way more utility than Anima does. And like again, if your opponent does end up like misplaying there, it's like okay, like I guess maybe that's like fine, but like you also have to consider how often does that happen? How often are you able to specifically get a level 1 monster that isn't a token because Anima can't use tokens from Link Cross? How often is it not going to be banished off Extravagance? Like I don't know. It's like too many stars have to align for that card to be that good. And I know it's like one single card choice, but um, like I really kind of thought about like how to optimally build the extra deck as best as I could, because I feel like actually the extra deck isn't as much of a throwaway as people would like to believe. Like it really can help you climb and do a lot of really cool stuff. So yeah, Phoenix and Security Dragon, these are ways to get rid of the tokens, just to have like link twos. Like these are like the best ones. And then Ningirsu, really good. I feel like because we're also playing Haunted Rock, it's fine because like it's just a free card that you can send away with Ningirsu, and like you can add it back off Silk and like keep looping it that way and stuff. But yeah, it's nice because it's like the only non-targeting removal really. So I feel like I need to play at least one. Selene's a cool one. This is a card that allows you to bring back stuff like Melisik or Silquidus to use their graveyard effects. So that's really good in terms of coming to Access Code Talker. And the cool thing about my specific build is that because I'm playing Call by the Grave, like this actually becomes alive more often than it otherwise would be. I didn't play Call by the Grave specifically for like this Selene interaction, but it just ended up happening where I was like, oh, I have a Call by the Grave, which ended up being like the third spell combined with my opponent's stuff. So I'm like, oh, that ended up being pretty convenient. But yeah, like Selene is very good. Not much to say there. And then Access Code Talker, which is like the big boss monster. I don't think I summoned it during the tournament, but it did come up in testing. So yeah, that's pretty good. So that rounds out the extra deck. I actually wanted to play more cards in this extra deck, believe it or not. Like I wanted to play Unicorn, just in case. I wanted to play Appaloosa. I wanted to play Bomber Dragon, just like more Link 4 payoffs for Selene. I wanted to like I would have played Anima, Relinquished Anima, if I had like the space for it, but like I don't know, just like with how little space there is, at least for me, like I felt the extra space was actually really tight. Even though I'm playing 3 whole Link Cross, which seems excessive, but like I really do feel like that was the correct choice. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the side deck. So we have 3 DD Crow, which was Nibiru, but again, like I mentioned earlier, I decided that Nibiru it not only conflicts with Faker. That's not like the main reason. It's just that like in this particular format without Needle Fiber, it just sits in your hand a lot of the time. Where like again, making 1-for-1 trades is fine in a deck where things go +1. And DD Crow is. I did mention that like Call by the Grave was sort of a surrogate for it. Like it was kind of a surrogate, but like DD Crow obviously is better going second in a lot of cases. And again, if you were trying to insulate yourself against side deck hate, then this is the way to go. Like just more hand traps. 3 Cosmic Cyclone. I think this card is pretty needed. This deck has a very notable bad Eldritch matchup, and I'm fortunate enough to actually not have played any Eldritch in the tournament. Like my matchups were like really crazy. But yeah, this card was still really useful because it's still good enough in like things like the mirror match or like things like Subterror, which I did play. But it has like the widest coverage, I feel, and like you can out problem cards just like on your own turn if you need to. I just felt like it's solid as compared to like Heavy Stormduster, which historically is really good because like in control matchups like the Altergeist Mirror or Sky Striker, when like that was super popular, like those were both super popular matchups, Stormduster would just infinitely get you, like it would get you so much further ahead just because of the inherent +1. But yeah, I feel like that's not really as needed when like the format is wide open given the absence of the top 2 decks, and given the fact that again, like even with Eldritch not being entirely absent, but like just taking on different forms in terms of Invoked back to Pure or even Lightsworn, this is still like a handy tool to have to just slow down their game a bit, because like you can accelerate the game state as much as you want, but if they can keep up with you, then like I feel like Eldritch has the better grind. So yeah, you definitely need ways to just cut off their resource looping. And we have 3 evenly matched, which is obviously Blowout going second. I expected Mirrors again. I didn't play any, but yeah, just big Blowout card. Evenly Faker is nice if you have it. Iron Wall, which is really interesting. So this is a hedge against things like Dinosaur. This is a hedge against things like Orchist, which I expected to be popular, and I played 2 of. This was really good against. It's incidentally good against evenly matched. It's not like the reason you board it in. Like you wouldn't board it in against like, for example, a Geist Mirror specifically because of evenly. But in cases where like your opponent is playing a deck that already loses to Iron Wall, it's nice. And again, this is also good against Eldritch, which I mean, it's kind of weird like playing Floodgate or siding into Floodgates in a backer deck, because like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to side Floodgates because like your opponent's going to main deck or sorry side deck in back or hate anyway. So like you're kind of playing into your opponent's siding pattern, but at the same time, like this is a card that I feel like is just much more. It does a lot more when it manages to stick, versus something like maybe Lancia, which is another consideration for like Eldritch. I just feel like this sticking, like I'll take the variance if it means I can actually like outpace my opponent and win the game a lot more quickly. So that's kind of the logic there. If it's just a Floodgate for the sake of like going first and like nothing else, then like I wouldn't really do it, because again like you're already losing the backer hate, so like why would you play into that post side? But I feel like I can make an exception for this, because not only is it an answer to one of those problems being evenly, but it just happens to be something that I feel other cards don't fulfill in what this deck is struggling with the most, which is one of the side deck's purposes I feel is to cover for the main deck's weakness, and I think Iron Wall does a good job of that. And finally, Solemn Judgment. Not much to say. You board it in every time you're going first, and hope that you don't get stormed or evenly out of the game. One card that I was considering was a Pointer of the Red Lotus, just as like maybe more copies of Judgment. Like if I wanted to cut Call by the Grave and put Judgment in the main deck and play a Pointer, there's a case to be made for that. Like I wouldn't completely fault one for doing it that way. I can't say that I missed a Pointer, because like a Pointer is not a card where like you can really pinpoint as like a reason that, well, that's a hard statement. Like it can certainly be game winning if you like snipe out your opponent's only like side deck card, and you get like knowledge on your opponent's hand, so you can like use your interruptions effectively and stuff. But it's hard to say that like it's a card that like you can really scrutinize and identify as like the linchpin of like your winning strategy, if that makes sense, right? Because like a Pointer is only as good as the rest of your hand is, because a Pointer by itself, it's just like another defensive card, except like it gives your opponent some time to be able to build back resources if you can't play the game yourself. So I felt like a Pointer was just not as good as Judgment. So like picking between one or the other is pretty easy, and then it's just like the rest of it is space, because I really wanted to play other cards too. Like I was thinking about Pankratops again. I was like considering Nibiru a bit, Heavy Storm Duster, in case I played like more mirrors specifically. But I'm like, do I really need like 5-6 slots for side deck or for backer hate? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Wasn't entirely sure. But yeah, so I think the deck ran really well. I think that this is like a good template for me moving forward if I wanted to continue with this deck. I'm not entirely sure how much I'm going to devote to it, because again, it is a deck that I really do have a soft spot for. However, I know that a lot of people aren't like too big a fan of this deck, and also there, truth be told, isn't a lot of like there's no lot of things to say about the deck other than just like talking about theory like I do, which I mean I can do for any deck that I get like devoted to. But yeah, I've rambled on for long enough. It's been 34 minutes, so I'm gonna cut it off here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more informative and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on Discord, Twitter, or Twitch, all through links in the description as always. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys!